In this presentation, you'll learn about the practice of professional counseling or psychotherapy using a psychotherapeutic approach. First, we'll situate the practice of professional psychotherapy in its global, historical, and cultural context. Next, we'll dive into the two elements of a psychotherapeutic approach, theory and practice. Third, I'll make a case for why awareness of your particular theory and way of practicing matters, how it benefits you and your clients, as well as the potential pitfalls of not doing so. Finally, I'll share some questions for reflection, encouraging you to think about who and how you are as a person, and which theory or theories might resonate most with you. Counseling and psychotherapy are terms commonly used to refer to the application of psychology and talk therapy that has become a profession, a professional way of helping people. It's a way of helping that is heavily utilized in the United States and other westernized countries, but it's important to remember that it's not the only way of helping people. For centuries, communities and people of culture have had a rich repertoire of ways for helping one another. People have sought and continue to seek help from gurus, masters, community grandmothers and grandfathers, matriarchs, spiritual leaders. There are also passed down practices involving singing, dancing, rituals, stories, and traditions that whole communities engage in for the health and wholeness of their members. Western psychotherapy approaches to helping are the new kid on the block, relatively speaking. I'm hoping you'll keep in mind this fact throughout this course as we study psychotherapy, that we are studying a particular kind of helping. It's also important to understand that the most widely used psychotherapeutic approaches came from the minds and imaginations of European American white men, coupled with the long-held beliefs that people with lighter skin were superior to those with darker skin. It might be easy to develop very narrow and biased and harmful understandings of what it means to help and heal. Quite frankly, strong arguments can be made, in fact have been made, that because of the lack of diverse voices and perspectives in the development of modern counseling and psychotherapy, whole groups of people have been hurt more than helped. For example, in the 1950s, therapists constructed the concept of a refrigerator mother or refrigerator parents to explain behavior of children with the neurology of autism or schizophrenia. That means that parents who sought help from therapists were blamed more than they were helped. Or we might consider Martin Luther King Jr.'s perspective that for people of color, psychological distress isn't caused by individual psychopathology, but rather the pathology of a broken and unjust social system. He said, "There are some things in our world to which men of goodwill must be maladjusted." In Dr. King's time, psychologists and therapists had reduced problems to the level of the individual and generalized their majority experience to all people. One of the major tasks for counselors and therapists today is to wrestle with this legacy and take into account the irrelevance of many major psychotherapeutic approaches for minority clients. Keeping this all in mind, let's talk about what a psychotherapeutic approach is. A psychotherapeutic approach has two elements, theory and practice. Theory is the element of a psychotherapeutic approach that attempts to explain two major aspects of the human experience. The first is how we understand the essential nature of a human. For example, what is the same about all of us? Who are we in our essence, and how are we wired? What is personality? What gives us individuality? Why are we different from one another? How much are we different? And where do those differences come from? Second, theories attempt to explain how we understand disorder or pathology and how we heal or change. Pathology would literally mean our understanding or talk, logos, about suffering, pathos. For example, how do we define disorder? What is pathological and what do we mean when we say something is disordered? What is the experience of disorder? What does it feel like, look like, and how does it affect people? Where does disorder come from, and how does it develop over time? What are the factors that contribute to sustained disorder? How do problems go away? When and why do they not? Finally, how does change happen? How can counselors intervene to create or facilitate positive change and healing? This last question about change is where theory informs practice. Your strategy for change will depend on your theory or the way you answer questions about human nature and disorder. In the major counseling theories, each leans towards one of 5 strategies: developing insight, increasing awareness, changing cognitions, engaging in adaptive behaviors, or creating systemic change. Your chosen theory will inform which of those 5 strategies you tend to take in counseling. Additionally, your theory will also shape your expectations of the role of the therapist and the client. It will influence your focus on talking versus doing, and it will inform your orientation to time, meaning whether you focus on your client's past, present, or future. Your theory will also shape your understanding of the length of therapy and inform how you evaluate your therapeutic work, or what you consider to be successful therapy. I hope you're getting a sense of how theory and practice are connected and how they are both essential pieces in what we call a psychotherapeutic approach. But you may still be wondering, what's so important about identifying and using a psychotherapeutic approach? Why not just use what works or do what comes naturally? One reason would be that research seems to indicate that having consistency in your approach is one way of increasing your effectiveness as a counselor. And who doesn't want to be effective? Maybe just as importantly, though, is that it also helps you to work in an ethical and respectful way with other people. Knowing your assumptions about human nature, pathology, and the change process helps you to make explicit what might otherwise be implicit. In this way, you can more clearly communicate with the people you work with about your intentions, purposes, expectations, and posture in the counseling process. Additionally, you can critically examine for your own benefit your assumptions and biases and look at them from time to time through the lens of other worldviews or belief systems. Finally, you may have personal strengths, values, or natural ways of thinking that may align well with a certain theoretical orientation. By deepening your understanding of that theory and the practices associated with it, you also provide yourself with opportunities to grow, both professionally and personally. In addition to considering the context within which major understandings of professional helping practices have been developed, I hope you also consider your own context. Are you accustomed to interacting with people with different perspectives, or is that an unfamiliar experience? Who have been your greatest influences? Where are you located socially and culturally? Who do you see around you that looks like you, and how often does that happen? Based on your experience, what does it mean to be a successful or good or healthy person? What biases might you have? Finally, I encourage you, as you learn about theories and practices of counseling, to pay attention to who and how you are and consider the following. What is your natural way of understanding the problems that people face? What is your natural way of being when people come to you for help? What is your natural way of intervening in their lives? How is your natural approach informed or shaped by your unique view of faith and/or spirituality? Who would this work well with? Who might find your approach more difficult? How is your natural approach informed by your personal experience? What do you believe is the purpose or goal of counseling? Can it help? If so, why and how? What experiences have you had that you found helpful or made a positive impact on your life? What were the elements that made up those experiences? What is bad help? Have you had experiences that inform your perspective on what is unhelpful? Is there an approach where you find resonance? Is there an approach that helps you do what is important to you, be who you are, and provides clear practices for the how that will help you embody or move towards your values and identity as a therapist? Let's take a minute to review what you learned. First, there are many ways that people have helped each other over thousands of years. More recently, in westernized areas of the world, professional psychotherapy has become a common way of helping. Psychotherapeutic approaches have been developed primarily by European American white males, which means there's a need to consider the efficacy of these approaches for minority clients and acknowledge the incomplete nature of our picture of what helping is. Therapists and counselors who are effective have some type of psychotherapeutic approach, which means they have a coherent counseling theory and practices that align with this theory. Theory matters. It helps counselors practice responsibly, ethically, and effectively. It also helps counselors to grow and think critically about what they do and why. Finally, pay attention to what ideas and practices most resonate with you as you think about how you might try to be helpful to someone. The best psychotherapeutic approaches are the ones that fit with who you are and how you want to be as a professional helper.